One day, Jessica went for a walk in the forest but took a wrong path and got stuck in the land of monsters. Several orcs started chasing her, and she needed to hide somewhere. Suddenly, she spotted some places where she could hide. She needs to choose from 3 options: a pyramid where a furious mummy lives, a haunted house, and a vampire castle. Where should she hide? Jessica should choose the castle because it's daytime and the vampire will be asleep. John went back home from a 2-day business trip. When he entered the house, he saw a police officer. He said he had come half an hour ago because there had been an alarm in his house. John didn't believe him and called the police. Why? When John was driving up to his house, there was no other car outside. If the police officer had been real, there would have been another car parked nearby. It means that there's a thief in disguise in the house. 2 days ago, someone broke into Mrs. Robinson's house and stole the expensive jewelry she hid in a secret place only a couple of people knew about. These were Emily, her friend, Jerry, her cousin, and Alice, her niece. The following day, someone left a note in Mrs. Robinson's mailbox. It said, "It was D+1, L+1, J-1, K+1, Z-1. Who stole the jewelry?" It was Emily. D+1 stands for the letter that follows D, which is E. L+1 stands for M, J+1 stands for the preceding letter, which is I, K+1 stands for L, and Z-1 means Y. Jack works in a hat store. A hat there costs $10. A customer liked the hat and wanted to buy it. He handed a $20 bill to Jack. Jack didn't have the change, so he asked another shop assistant, Mary, to go and make change in a nearby store. Mary went back and brought 3 bills, a $10 bill and 2 $5 bills. Jack handed the change to the customer. Sometime later, the shop assistant from the nearby store, Ellen, came to the hat store and said the money Mary had given her was fake and insisted on giving her the money back. Jack had to return the money to Ellen. How much money did Jack lose, including the price of the hat? Jack lost $20. He gave $10 as a change, and the hat cost $10. You don't need to count $20 he gave back to Ellen. He took that money first and then gave it back, which makes it 0 loss for him. A red apple costs $1, a green one costs $2, and a blue one costs $3. What apples and how many of them did Jamie buy if we know he spent $3 and 2 bills only? Jamie bought a green and a red one. He paid a $1 bill for the red one and a $2 bill for the green one. Yeah, he could have grabbed the blue one and given the same 2 bills, but have you ever seen blue apples? Harry loves different kinds of bets. Every time he meets his friends, he has a new one. Last weekend, he suggested a challenge. He said that he could place a cup in the middle of a room and easily crawl into it. Nobody believed that he could do that, so Harry's friends were sure they would win. Still, Harry won the bet. How did he do that? He said he could place a cup in a room and crawl into it. He didn't mention whether it was a cup or a room, though. So he crawled into a room and won the bet. Anna left a shopping list for her husband, Jeff. There were only 2 items, but she decided to prank Jeff a bit. So she didn't write exactly what he needed to buy, but wrote 2 riddles. The first item in her list was full of holes, but still could hold water. And the second item had 4 fingers and a thumb, but it wasn't alive. What was Jeff supposed to buy? Jeff needed to grab a sponge and a pair of gloves. Andrew went hiking to the mountains, but all of a sudden, an earthquake started. He fell through a narrow tunnel into a large pit where zombies live. Luckily, Andrew has 3 different elixirs that could help him. The first elixir can make him grow in size. The second elixir can make him fly, and the third elixir can make him invisible. He only can drink 1 elixir. Which one should he choose? He doesn't need to grow in size because he won't make it through the tunnel if he does. The zombies living in the pit can hear and smell, so they'll find him even if he's invisible. He should choose the ability to fly. It'll help him get back. A notorious bad guy caught William, a wealthy businessman, and locked him in a room. "I won't let you out until you double the money I leave for you." And the criminal put $3,000 on the table. By the time he returned, William had already doubled the money, but he hadn't left the room or talked to anyone. How did he do that? He put the money in front of the mirror. 2 friends, Eric and Angus, decided to play. On the table, there was a plate with 11 green apples and 7 red apples. Eric was blindfolded, and he needed to grab some apples without seeing them. How many apples should he take to make sure he has 2 apples of the same color? The total quantity of apples on the plate doesn't matter. The main thing is that there are only 2 colors. So if Eric takes 3 apples, there will be at least 2 apples of the same color for sure. 3 students, Amanda, Lisa, and Mark, were having a party the night before an important exam, so they weren't ready for it. The following day, they called the professor and asked him to reschedule the exam. They said they got a flat tire on their way to the university, which was a lie. The professor agreed to reschedule the exam, but he said that if he finds out they were lying, all of them will get an F. The students agreed. Some days later, when Amanda, Lisa, and Mark came to the university to pass the exam, the professor gave them an exam sheet with 1 question only. The students were sitting far away from each other so that they couldn't cheat. When the professor collected the sheets, all the students got an F. What question was it? The professor asked the students which tire got flat. They weren't ready for it, and all of them had different answers. Ashley invited friends and cooked a delicious dinner. When everybody was at the table, she suddenly realized one of her friends didn't like the meal. Who was it? It's Chris. He secretly shared his pasta with Ashley's dog. The police got an anonymous letter about an upcoming heist in one of the museums. To stop it from happening, they need to know the month the heist is planned for. The letter had a secret code. The police couldn't crack it, so they brought it to the detective. What month is the heist planned for? It's September. Star stands for S, pear stands for P, and rain stands for R. There were only 3 letters in the code, but September is the only month that has the letters S, P, and R in its name. There are 20 floors in the apartment building. The higher the floor is, the more people live there. Which floor does the elevator go to most often? It's the first floor. The residents of all floors go down to the first floor. The other day, Mary was rummaging around her grandmother's attic when she accidentally stumbled upon 5 short chains, each made of 4 silver links. She thought it would be great if she combined them all into one big chain of 20 links. When she went back to town, she brought those tiny chains to a jeweler. He told her it would cost her $5 for every silver link that he would have to break and then reseal. How much will the chain cost? Mary could do that for $25 if she told the jeweler to break a link in each chain. However, she asked the jeweler to break all 4 links in one chain and use them to attach the other chains together, which cost her $20. Stephanie got hungry and wanted to boil a 2-minute egg. She had a 3-minute hourglass timer, a 4-minute hourglass timer, and a 5-minute hourglass timer. How can she cook the egg for only 2 minutes? When Stephanie sees the water boiling, she should turn the 3-minute timer and the 5-minute timer over. When the 3-minute timer runs out, she needs to put the egg in the boiling water. She'll have 2 minutes left on the 5-minute hourglass timer. Victoria and Ethan were on vacation. One day, Victoria told Ethan she couldn't go to the beach with him because she was feeling unwell. When Ethan came back to the room to grab his wallet, Victoria was gone. He found her by the pool and asked, "Are you alone here?" She nodded, but Ethan immediately realized she was lying. How? There were 2 glasses and 2 portions of ice cream on the table. Vincent got locked in a room with no windows and only one massive door. There's a panel with several buttons on the left and another one with a hint on it on the right. There's also a clock on the wall above the door. Which button should Vincent press to get out of the trap? The green triangle. The numbers on the panel represent hours. If you connect them on the clock face, you'll get a triangle. The door opened and Vincent got into a dimly lit hall. There, he saw one more door, but this time, both the lock and the key were hanging together on the same chain. But after examining this system for a couple of seconds, the guy understood he wouldn't get out this way. Why? The key has a different pattern. It won't fit in the lock. Vincent needs to look for another way to escape. Then Vincent notices a table standing in a dark corner. There's a piece of paper, a knife, and several inflated balloons lying on it. Vincent picks up the paper. It's a note. To get out of here, you must puncture a balloon with a knife. But if the balloon loses any air or bursts, you'll stay here forever. Vincent thought for a while, then he did something, and a hidden door opened in one of the walls. What did he do? He let the air out of one of the balloons. After that, he easily punctured it with a knife. Detective Marcus and another passerby became witnesses of a car accident. A man, hit by a minivan, was lying on the ground, unconscious. Marcus rushed to the nearest cafe to call an ambulance. When he got back, the passerby told him the man had turned onto his back but hadn't come to his senses. After looking at the scene for a couple of seconds, the detective said, "You'd better return everything you've taken from this man." Why did he say so? When they saw the man first, only one button was buttoned on his suit jacket. But now, it's already 2 buttons. The passerby must have opened his jacket to look for the wallet and then buttoned it up incorrectly. Look at this picture and try to figure out who is an alien in disguise. It's the guy in the yellow shirt. He's eating a banana, but he hasn't peeled it before biting on it. He probably sees this fruit for the first time. 3 famous detectives came to a coffee shop to discuss a tricky case. A waiter came up to them and asked, "Does everyone want coffee?" The first detective said, "I don't know." The second detective answered, "I don't know." And the third detective said, "Yes." Do you know what the first 2 detectives ordered? All the detectives ordered coffee. Each of them wanted to have this drink, but the first 2 couldn't know if it would be everyone's choice. If the first 2 detectives hadn't wanted coffee, they'd have simply said no. So, when the third detective heard the replies of his colleagues, he figured out both of them wanted coffee. And since he was also going to take a cup, he said yes. Ralph, Willie, Amber, and Grace are in a museum room. Someone stole a priceless exhibit from this room several hours ago. Ralph, Willie, and Amber claim they have nothing to do with the crime, but the detective doesn't believe them. They all get arrested and taken to the police station. Only Grace, who hasn't answered the question, is free to go. Why? Grace is the detective. Janice was having her morning coffee in a cafe when she heard a car screeching to a halt, then loud shouting. She ran there and saw a man with his bicycle on the ground and a car standing nearby. The cyclist didn't look hurt, and Janice helped him to get up. The car driver came up to them too. The cyclist pointed at the man. "He made me crash by hitting my bike with his car." But the driver said, "I saw him losing control of his bike in the mirror. Then he fell to the ground, and I stopped the car to go check on him." Janice almost immediately understood who was lying. Have you figured it out? The car doesn't have side mirrors. There are also lots of things in the back seat. They block the view of the road. So the driver couldn't have seen anything in his rearview mirror either. He's lying. One wealthy businessman was famous for always wearing a white hat. But one day, he came to his office with a bunch of fruit on his head. His employees were shocked, but they didn't dare to question the man. The situation repeated the next day. On the third day, the businessman's secretary plucked up all his courage and asked what was going on. The man answered, "That's because I lost a bet. I haven't fulfilled it yet, but I'll do it today. There's no need to order lunch for me." What did the businessman have to do to fulfill the bet? When he made this bet, he said, "If I lose, I'll eat my hat." Detective Mark Darson suspected one man of committing a crime. He decided to stake out his house. Not too far away, he spotted an artist setting up her easel. Apparently, she was going to draw the criminal's house. At one point, the detective had to go away to the police station. He asked the girl to call him if she saw someone entering or leaving the house. She agreed. When Mark came back in the evening, the artist told him she'd seen no one. The detective immediately understood she was lying. How did he figure it out? When he was leaving, all the windows in the house were closed. But in the picture the girl drew, the windows are open. It means someone was inside while Mark was away. Take a look at this picture and try to understand which guy is Ben. Ben is the guy looking for something on the floor. He's the only one not wearing his shoes. That's because they're still in his locker. You've got a sack filled with coffee beans. You need to use this coffee to completely fill 2 other sacks of the same size. How can you do it? Put one empty sack into the other and fill them with coffee. A large sum of money was stolen from Mr. Green's safe. The police suspect Alan. But Alan says, "I don't know anything about safes or about how to open them. I'm a simple blacksmith." The detective doesn't believe him and asks Alan to prove it. He gives the guy one job-related task. If he copes with it, he's telling the truth. Alan gets 5 different chains. Each of them has 3 links. The detective asks the guy to make one chain out of these 5 pieces, but he can separate and combine only 3 links. In no time, Alan finished this task and was released. How did he do it? Alan separated 3 links of one chain and used them to connect the remaining 4 chains. Can you move just one matchstick to make a square? Pull this matchstick up a bit. Here's your perfect square. Mr. Bernard, a famous inventor, lived on the 6th floor of an apartment building. After long months of work, he finally created a time machine. He packed lots of food, water, and other necessary stuff and was ready to test his invention. He set the timer so that the machine took him 500 years back into the past. Mr. Bernard was about to press start when a thought came to his mind. He took the mechanism and carried it to his garage that was on the 1st floor. Why? This way, the inventor would avoid getting hurt. 5 centuries ago, there were no such high buildings. He'd simply fall to the ground from the height of the 6th floor. Look at these guys carefully. One of them lied when he said he hadn't painted the green smiley face on the fence. Which one is it? It's the guy on the left. Check out his left hand. Even though it's in his pocket, you can still spot some green paint he'd used. Bruce was walking along the beach when he found a glass bottle. The thing looked old, and the guy spent a long time trying to open it. Finally, he succeeded. To his shock, a genie rose from the bottle. "I'll fulfill your 3 wishes, but you aren't allowed to wish for more wishes." Bruce agreed, but still managed to get more wishes. How did he do it? His first wish was that the genie allowed him to ask for more wishes. Several birds landed on trees, one bird for one tree. But in this case, one of them didn't have a tree of its own. Then they regrouped with 2 birds sitting on one tree. After this, one tree was left free. How many birds and trees are there? There are 4 birds and 3 trees. Detective Hall, one of the agency's most talented detectives, used his coded key and entered the apartment where the secret documents were hidden. To help him find them, his assistant Clark had left an encrypted note with the exact location of the documents. It looked like this. Detective Hall deciphered the message and found the documents. Where were they hidden? The note says, "Under the carpet in the studio." The detective just read it backwards and ignored the spaces between the words.
Esme was having her regular walk in the forest and got lost. After wandering around for a while, she found the witch's house. She walked in, petted the cat, and asked the witch to send her home. The witch had a question for her. If Esme answered correctly, she'd be free to go home. If not, Esme would have to stay with the witch and the cat. My grandma was born in 10 BCE. How old did she turn in 100 CE? She turned 109 because there was no year 0. There was 1 BCE and then 1 CE. Take a look at the picture and try to find teeth. Here they are. Can you find the odd emoji? It's right here. Okay, here's another one for you. Which emoji is different? Here it is. Hope you've got it. Can you find the odd one this time? Here it is. A group of students was having a history lesson. They used a time machine to observe different periods of time. When the teacher left them for a minute, the students used the time machine without permission and were taken to different times. Take a look at the pictures and try to find our time travelers. Can you see a student here? Look, this guy is taking a selfie. Okay, the next one. What can you say? Look at this girl. She's wearing sneakers. They didn't exist in ancient Egypt. What about this picture? Can you find a student here? Look, this guy is drinking soda. Finally, the fourth one. Can you find a time traveler? This girl has pink hair. Now, take a look at the picture and try to understand what's wrong with it. Look closer at the alphabet on the classroom wall. The order of the letters isn't correct. E and F have been switched. What can you say about this image? Yeah, the skyscrapers definitely don't belong here. Mrs. Mitchell fell from the third floor of her mansion. Atlas was walking by and saw it happen, so she called the police and ambulance immediately and stayed with the woman to make sure she was all right. The girl said she had seen Mrs. Mitchell washing the windows, so it probably was an accident, but Detective Callum didn't believe it and said that someone had pushed her out. Why? The window she fell out of is closed. If it had been an accident, the window would have remained open, but someone closed it. One late evening, someone robbed the arcade. There were 3 suspects: Ginny, Cyrus, and Charles. Ginny said she had indeed been to the arcade that day, but she was innocent. Cyrus said she had a date that day. She looked at the clock hanging on the wall and left the arcade at 6:30 p.m. Charles said he had been busy playing and hadn't seen or noticed anything. Who's lying? Cyrus. Here's the room he was talking about. But as you see, there's no clock on the wall. Another one for you. Be attentive. Look, the girl isn't reflected in the mirror. Weird. What's wrong here? The calendar claims there are just 30 days in August. Where's August 31st? What do you have to say about this one? It's morning, but there are stars in the sky, but they aren't visible during the day. Everly got into a car accident and lost memory. 2 guys, Toby and Dustin, came to take her home from the hospital. Each of them said he was her boyfriend. Can you tell who Everly's real boyfriend is? It's probably Dustin. He has Everly's name tattooed on his arm. Lyra woke up in a dungeon and couldn't remember what happened. The girl saw a door, but once she walked towards it, the wall started to move. Lyra could get out, but she needed to type in the 6 remaining digits of the passcode. Can you tell what the passcode is? The combination is just a set of 2-digit numbers: 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. So the other 6 digits are 1, 6, 1, 7, 1, 8. They make the remaining 16, 17, and 18. In the first row, there are letters L, T, V, and X. In the second row, there are letters A, F, H, K, N, and Z. Follow this logic. Which three letters should be in the third row? The letters in the first row all require two straight lines to be written, and they're in alphabetical order. In the second row, the letters are also in alphabetical order, and they are made of three straight lines. So, in the third row, there should be letters that require 4 lines, and they should be in alphabetical order too, which means these 3 letters are E, M, and W. Antarctica, Australia, Africa, Asia, and Europe. Can you tell what's similar about the names of these continents? All of them start with the same letter they end with. Ada and Celeste are going to work by car and are running late. Who's doing something wrong? Ada. She isn't wearing a seatbelt. Leo and Liberty are going on a date after Liberty has spent a month in London. The woman is driving to the restaurant, and Leo has already arrived and is waiting for her. Who is doing something wrong? Liberty. She's driving on the left side of the road. Girl, you're not in London anymore. Georgia is driving her car to school, and Palmer is taking her son to the doctor. Who is doing something wrong? Georgia. There's a cat wandering around in her car. The animal can get spooked, and then it may scratch the driver or hide under the pedals. It can lead to an accident. Eleanor and Fleur return home after spending the night at their friend's studying for the test. Can you tell which of them wasn't studying, but was instead at a party? I'd say it's Fleur. She's wearing a dress, high heels, and evening makeup. A college soccer team played 6 matches in the season. They won 2, drew 2, and lost 2. In total, they conceded 2 goals and scored 3. What are the results of all 6 matches? Every time they lost, they must have conceded at least 1 goal. They lost 2 matches and conceded 2 goals, which means they conceded 1 goal in each match. The score of these must be 0-1. We're out of conceded goals, so the score of the 2 matches that ended in a draw should be 0-0. Now, we're only left with the 3 goals and 2 winning games. So, in Game 1, they must have won with the score of 1-0, and in another one, with the score of 2-0. Neo works in an airport. His job is to check ID cards and not let suspicious people in. Take a look at these 3 ID cards and try to figure out which person has a fake one. The second ID looks suspicious. The month and day of birth are switched, so I'd pay closer attention to his documents. One evening, in the city's Museum of Natural History, the lights went off for 3 minutes. When the problem was solved, museum workers discovered that a rare and expensive dinosaur fossil had been stolen. The city's best detective came to investigate the case. He had 3 suspects and asked them what they had been doing when the lights had gone off. Ashley said that she had been in the bathroom. Ben said he had been in another room looking at paintings. Evan said he had been in the room with the fossil, but he couldn't see or do anything because it was dark. Who is lying? Ben, it's the Natural History Museum. There are no paintings. In a little town, someone stole a bucket of chicken wings from a local store. There were 3 suspects. All of them were customers who had been to the store that morning. A detective visited each of them and asked if they'd known anything about the incident. Mr. Gibbs said he'd been in a rush that morning. He had to be home on time for a work call. Mrs. Connor said her family was vegetarian, so she wouldn't be interested in chicken. Haley, a college student, said she had got her orange juice and sandwich and left. Can you tell who's lying? It's Mrs. Connor. She said her family was vegetarian, but take a look at the room behind her back. There is freshly cooked chicken on the table. Sierra and Fred like extreme sports. Sierra is about to jump with a parachute, and Fred is going to jump into the lake from a cliff. Who's in danger? Fred! There are rocks under the cliff he's about to jump from. Ava has 3 sisters, and all of them are mothers. Ava has 1 daughter. Eliza has 2 nephews and 3 nieces. Chloe has 1 nephew and 3 nieces. Ava has 1 nephew and 5 nieces. How many nephews and nieces does Ava have? Ava has no sons, which means all the boys are distributed between her sisters. Chloe and Ava have only 1 nephew each, while Eliza has 2. It means that Eliza doesn't have sons. Chloe has 1 and Ava has 1. Therefore, Ava has 2 nephews. Chloe has 3 nieces and Ava has 5. They both have Eliza and Ava as sisters. So the difference between them must be because of Chloe, who has 2 girls. Eliza has 3 nieces. 2 of them are Chloe's daughters and 1 is Ava's. It means Ava doesn't have any daughters, but Ava has 5 nieces. 1 of them is Ava's daughter, and 2 are Chloe's daughters. Eliza must have 2 daughters then. So, Ava has 2 nephews and 4 nieces.
Uh-oh. Tommy was exploring old caves outside the city when he got trapped in a mysterious dungeon. There were 3 ways out, but only one of them was safe. Behind the first door, a fire was raging. Behind the second door, there was acid rain, which could melt any substance within seconds. Behind the third door, there was a huge brown bear that hadn't eaten for 2 years. Which way should Tommy choose? Tommy should choose the third way. No animal can go for 2 years without food and survive. Barely. It was a stormy day, and it had been raining for several hours straight. A car accident happened in a tunnel. The yellow car crashed into the red one. The driver of the yellow car said it had been raining so heavily he hadn't seen anything, so the accident wasn't totally his fault. But the police asked the man to stop lying and claimed it was all his fault. Why? The accident happened in the tunnel. It couldn't be raining there. Mrs. McAdams, who was having a day off with her friends, came back home in the middle of the day to change her clothes. There, she found out that her daughter, Eveline, who she'd grounded, wasn't at home. Mrs. McAdams got angry and texted Eveline, asking where she was. Eveline texted her back, saying she was at school. The girl even attached a picture of the classroom. Mrs. McAdams didn't believe her daughter and told her to come home immediately. How did she understand Eveline wasn't at school? Look closely at her cell phone. It's Sunday. There's no school on Sundays. Ned works in a club. His job is to check people's ID cards and to not let suspicious people or people younger than 21 years old get inside. Take a look at these 3 ID cards and figure out who shouldn't enter the club. The first person is already 21, and nothing else looks suspicious in his ID. The second girl seems alright too. It's written that Brielle was born on September 31st. But such date doesn't exist. Her ID must be fake. Mrs. Cabell is the owner of a small company producing expensive designer cups. On Friday, when the working week was finally over, she got a call from her bank. The woman found out that someone had stolen all the money she had saved. Mrs. Cabell realized it must have been one of her workers, so she asked each of them what they had been doing that day. Sloan, a sales manager, said she had been talking to their clients and looking for new ones. Atticus, a potter, said he always made 1 cup a day, and he showed all the cups he had done that week. Sierra, a designer, said she had been working, but she also admitted she hadn't been really productive that day because of some family issues. Who lied? Atticus. There are 5 working days in a regular week. The man said he made 1 mug a day, but he only showed 4 mugs. It means he missed 1 day of work. Lennox and Finn were friends living in the same college dorm. One day, Lennox reported that something had happened to his friend. He said Finn hadn't left his room all day. He also never responded to any of Lennox's texts. In the evening, Lennox started to worry and knocked on Finn's door, but the guy didn't answer. Lennox peeked through the keyhole and saw that his friend was lying on the floor, so he called the police. After that, Lennox got arrested. Why? Lennox has a bandage on his right eye, but the keyhole is located in such a way that it's only possible to look inside with the right eye. It means the guy couldn't do it. He simply knew what had happened. Esme was having a walk in the forest and got lost. For about the 20th time. Hey, don't ask. Anyway, she found the witch's house, walked in, said hi, petted the cat, and asked the witch to show her the way home. But the witch had a problem. She was learning a new spell and accidentally did something strange to her chairs. On the bright side, she now had a riddle for Esme to solve. The witch had 20 chairs. Now, some of the chairs only had 2 legs, and half of the rest had no legs at all. How many legs did all these 20 chairs have in total? We know that some of the chairs have, on average, 2 legs per chair. The rest of them have either 4 legs or no legs at all. And since half of the rest have no legs and the other half have 4, together they have 2 legs per chair. So there are exactly 40 legs. Mr. Tucker was a businessman. He wanted to find an interesting hobby to impress people. He chose art, even though he knew nothing about it. Still, he kept buying paintings and even owned a couple of famous masterpieces. He liked to invite his potential business partners over to show off his collection. One day, his guest was Miss Geneva Darby, a young lady who owned a jewelry business. As always, Mr. Tucker boasted about his collection, but Miss Darby wasn't impressed. Why? Look closer at this supposedly 16th century painting. There are a couple of cars on the road, but there were no cars at that time, so the painting must be fake. Evie and Kai were planning to go on a bike tour with their friends. Unfortunately, Evie didn't feel well, so she canceled on her friends and asked Kai to stay with her. Kai was disappointed but agreed. Evie fell asleep. When she woke up, she already felt better. She offered Kai to ride their bikes a bit, just the 2 of them. But when they went outside, Evie realized that while she had been sleeping, Kai had been out with the friends without her. How did she understand it? Look, Evie's bike is all wet. It must have been raining while she was asleep. But Kai's bike is dry. It means that he used it and then wiped it off. Or maybe he wasn't even in the area when it was raining. 2 weeks ago, a bank was robbed, but the robber hadn't been found yet. A phone call woke Detective Callum up in the middle of the night. His colleague reported that a farmer had found the money. When the detective arrived, he questioned the farmer. The man said, "I argued with my wife and went outside. That's when I found a bag with money in a cornfield." Detective Callum asked if the farmer had noticed anything suspicious before. The farmer replied, "About 2 weeks ago, before going to bed, I looked out of the window. I saw a man walking through the field. It was a full moon and I could clearly see his silhouette. But there wasn't enough light to notice more details about him." The farmer was arrested. Why? The farmer said it had been a full moon 2 weeks before, but it's impossible. As you see, it's a full moon now. The farmer is lying, but why? Ashley was hurrying to an unplanned business meeting. She asked her boyfriend, Dean, to walk the dog. Dean agreed. But then his friend called and invited him to play a new video game. So the guy decided to skip walking the dog that day and joined his friends. He and Ashley met right outside the house when they both were going back home. Ashley asked what Dean had been doing. The guy said, "I walked the dog and then went to play video games with my friends." Ashley immediately understood he was lying. How did she figure it out? It's winter. Look at the footprints in the snow. There are Ashley's footprints going both ways and Dean's footprints going both ways too. But there are no dog footprints. Mrs. Rivers reported that someone had broken into her house. They stole all the money and jewelry she kept in her living room. Detective Callum arrived to investigate the crime. The room was a mess. It was obvious that someone had been looking for something there. But in the end, the detective concluded that there was no robbery. Mrs. Rivers made the whole thing up. Why did he decide so? Look at this very expensive and fragile tea set lying on the floor. If a criminal had really been there, he wouldn't have cared about the set. It would be smashed after falling down. It seems that when Mrs. Rivers was staging a robbery, she didn't feel like breaking her expensive tea set. Viviana and Malcolm were working outside. Malcolm was repairing the roof, and Viviana was working in the garden. Suddenly, a hammer fell from the roof and hit Viviana on the head. She was taken to a hospital, and the police came to figure out what had happened. When Malcolm told them everything, the police arrested him for staging an accident. Why didn't they believe the guy? Viviana was working right next to the house. She was sitting under the roof. If the hammer had fallen accidentally, it would have slid down the roof and fallen behind the woman's back. It could hit her only if someone threw it at her on purpose. Well, that's not nice.